podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for some important news and news updates. We are recording this at 11:15 on Thursday night. It's late. I was laying in bed, ready to go to sleep. And then my phone started pinging off with messages, people telling us that Sunderland are about to make some big moves, not transfer-wise, but off the field. So we're here to talk about it. And having asked around to see who was still awake and who was available to chat, Andrew Smithson, like me, was wide-eyed and ready to go. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. You put out the bat signal or the Roker Report signal, didn't you? Trying to see who was still about.
Yeah, and you, I mean, you can share this with the listeners. The first you'd heard of this was when I messaged you about it, so we have to bring you up to speed on everything.
Yeah, you've given us a crash course. My only worry now is pronouncing some of these names. They're all new to me, but yeah. It's interesting news, Gav. It could mean quite a lot for the coming season.
Yes. Well, let's let people in on it if they're not already aware, because this will be dropping first thing in the morning. So for a lot of people who have gone to bed, this might be the first to hear about it. Apparently, according to virtually everybody, L'Equipe, I think it was Gianluca Di Marzio who first brought the story, who's a reputable sports journalist, and also The Athletic. Sunderland are close to appointing Florent Ghisolfi, I think that's how you say it, as the club's director of football, and he will not be replacing Christian Speakman. Speakman will continue as sporting director and will work alongside him. Anybody who doesn't know who this guy is, he's 40-year-old. He has just, when I say just, literally on Thursday, left Roma as their sporting director and wrote a love letter to their fans and the club for a great year that he'd had there. Somebody who had actually worked alongside Régis Lebris before in the past. He was a part of the coaching staff at FC Lorient from July 2017 until July 2019. He was the assistant manager then, obviously under Régis Lebris, but he will have worked alongside him as part of the coaching team. And then he went on to be the sports coordinator at Lens for 3.5 years. Then he moved on to Nice, where he was the sporting director for just under 2 years. And interestingly, he appointed Francesco Farioli, who is the manager that was rumoured very strongly to be taken over at Sunderland. There's some other Tony Mowbray was linked with departure. So very interesting. All these links are starting to come together. He's linked to Lebris. He's linked to a manager we never ended up appointing. And then in July of 2024, he went in at Roma as their technical director, and he's lasted just under a year. Roma, who I think they got the first top 5 finish in a long time. They've actually had quite a decent season, considering a little bit of upheaval there. I think Claudio Ranieri's done a good job. And from what I've just read, the comments on social media from Roma fans, which followed his little letter, his departing letter to the club, seemed pretty positive, and everybody seemed to like him. So that's what we know about him. What we know about the deal is scarce at the minute. I mean, there's new details coming in literally as we record. But a sports journalist by the name of Nicolo Shearer, not Alan's brother or anything, it's spelled slightly differently, I said it's a done deal and confirmed. He's coming into Sunderland as a football director. The contract is until 2028. And as I said, there is a full article on the Athletics website about this, just outlining it. And the most interesting detail is that he'd had interest from other clubs, including Newcastle, who were assessing candidates to succeed Paul Mitchell, and with interest also from Juventus, Fiorentina and Saudi Arabia. And I've just seen an article there, which is on a Juventus news website, which seems to indicate that he was all set to go in there as their sporting director of football type thing. So yeah, lots of details coming in. We are kind of reacting this as it happens, Andrew, and I've just overloaded you with information there. But let's talk about what this means, because this feels really significant to me. Does it to you?
It does, yeah. Like you say, information's still coming in and we'll get the full facts in time. But it's obvious, given the names who are talking about this, that this is genuine for a start. This isn't just somebody on a wind up. It's genuine, Gav. It's obviously happening. And yeah, it is big. I think it's important that we know from the off that Christian Speakman is expected to be around still, because he's been a major figure in the club over the last few years. You would assume he's on board with this. But, we're now in the Premier League. We obviously need different people in place guiding the club and kind of working alongside Speakman. I think as well, it's obvious he's got some sort of relationship with Lebris. In the past, there was head coaches didn't have any say in this type of appointment, but it sounds as if Lebris knows this fella. So it's clearly a big move that the important people already at the club are on board with and have had some sort of input with. It, on the face of it, it looks promising.
Yeah. I think you touched on something there which is important, which is that now we're in the big time. I think if you look across the spectrum of the clubs in the Premier League, most of them will have multiple people in different positions. It does kind of feel like Speakman's been wearing many hats now for a couple of years. It's almost, it's him and Stuart Harvey and then the head coach working together on things on the footballing side. But this Ghisolfi fella, without knowing really anything about him, and we're going to learn more as time goes on, but the fact he was being tipped to take a similar post at Juventus, and as much as it pains us to say at Newcastle as well, linked with that position. And Roma are a huge club. I think it's it's really piqued me interest. The reason I've jumped out of bed to record about it is it just feels massive. It feels like, right, okay, now we're being very, very serious. We're in the Premier League now. It's time to put our boots on and crack on.
Yeah, you're dead right. Like you say, when you're being linked with clubs like Juventus, you've got Roma on your CV. You're not a joker. You're obviously a big player who's respected. Another thing that fascinates me behind all of this is it's come from nowhere. Often the club do their business now in a very professional manner. Things don't just happen on a whim. This obviously hasn't just all fallen into place today. But nobody's heard any whispers, Gav. Nobody's suggested anything. And like you've said, you're in bed. You're surprised by it. The news is caught me on the hop as well. The club obviously have a plan in place. They do things strategically. I think this could be key. And I know we all want to hear about signings and what have you. They take the big headlines. They're the things that fans want to see. But things like this are important building blocks towards that, Gav. You've got to have this system in place, and whatever role is in mind for him, it is going to be important. I just hope for Enzo Lafay's sake that he quite likes this fella, because he seems to be following him around wherever he goes. This Ghisolfi seems to turn up, so he might be on the phone to Enzo as we speak, asking about good places to live in Sunderland.
Knocking him up out of bed or wherever he is around the world. No, but I think just to go back to it a little bit, I just think that we've obviously got a plan, haven't we, for what we're going to do when we get to the top flight. And as part of that, we're going to it's not just about bringing in big players on the pitch. It's about bringing in big players off it. And not just, this lad's got some, if you look at some of his recent experience, it's really outstanding. But he's still very young. He's only 40-year-old. So, we talk about having a youthful approach to most things. Also, when you're appointing people off the pitch, you want to appoint people who are on the up. And this lad's certainly on the up. He's not somebody who's had a number of big roles and maybe struggled, and then he's looking for his next place to land and he's dropped back down a bit. And again as well, it's about Sunderland's plan going forward and attracting somebody like this. What does that tell you about how attractive we are? Like, this lad, I mean, by all intents and purposes, given how quickly this has happened, he's literally left Roma today. So effectively he's left Roma to come to Sunderland.
Yeah.
And I just think it's that to me, that to me is a big sign of our ambition. It's a good start.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge sign. And yeah, it's not the case of, from what we can gather, that Roma have got rid. You know, as you say, he's not somebody who's been peddled and is now just desperate to take a job. He looks to be comfortable in a major club, and now sees Sunderland on a similar level where he can, as you say, he's young, so he's going to want to progress. He's not going to go to a club where he's not able to do that. He must look at the way Louis Dreyfus seems to be planning ahead and think, yeah, I can work within that. I think, did you mention earlier, Gav, that he's worked with the head coach we were previously linked with, Flavi, I forgot.
Farioli.
Yeah, Farioli. Nearly called him Flavioli. I don't know who he is. We need to remember, Gav, that the reaction when he was being tipped is coming in, and I think that would have meant Tony Mowbray left.
Yes.
And Mowbray was really popular fella, had done a really good job.
Particularly at that point, because we just missed out on the promotion from the playoffs. So he was at the peak of his powers, really, and the club were looking further ahead. They were like, no, we want to bring this guy in. And I think from what we were told at the time, it was the reaction of the fans which changed their mind on that. But it's just, it is interesting that they might not be linked, but the fact that all these people are sort of linked in some way, and it is interesting. Yeah,
it is. And like you've said there, this potential head coach from before, it was perhaps the reaction of the fans that stopped him coming in. But I think as fans now, we're learning to trust these appointments. People didn't want Mowbray to go. We'd grown attached to him as a person as much as a head coach, Gav. But we can now see, when we're linked with these people, your first thought is, who on earth are they? But Labris has come in and done an amazing job. And now this new fella, Ghisolfi, I think fans are going to be welcoming to him and seeing what he does, because the club have shown they're able to source people properly and give them the tools needed to go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to go back to something you said, which was a good point.
Dear me, you must be short of sleep, Gav, if you're saying that.
No, you made a very good point. This has all happened out of nowhere, as far as we're concerned, and I think this is not a sign, but a reminder to us, because if you look at the transfer market, we are pretty quiet. Like, you don't tend to hear about things that actually are happening until sort of last minute. We'll be linked with these players, and then all of a sudden somebody will come out of nowhere that we haven't really been linked with. They'll be having a medical, and you're like, bloody hell, where did that? I think this regime are quite good at playing their cards close to their chest, and more often than not, if news breaks, it's never from our side. I mean, when this story first emerged tonight, it actually broke on the Italian side. Yeah. And I presume that's off the back of him leaving Roma. People have been asking questions and looking into why he's left Roma, and maybe doing some digging, have managed to find a lead on it. But it does impress me the way that we just seem to manage to do these things very, very efficiently and quietly. And I don't think this will be the only major backroom appointment that we make, because we've all heard about this 5-year plan for getting promotion to the Premier League, but they'll have thought long and hard about, right, when we get to the Premier League, we need this person in place. We need to bring this many people into the recruitment side of things. We need to bring this many people in on the scouting side of things. It's all about beefing the club up and becoming a proper Premier League outfit, really. Because, Christian Speakman did that fixtures breakfast for the Foundation of Light and gave a bit of an insight. And it was something you mentioned before we started recording, which I wanted to just touch on. But he did mention something about being out the country, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He was supposedly a couple of different places, and you assume that was to speak to potential transfer targets, but maybe it was as part of this news that's broken tonight. Going back to the way things are done, I think this is exactly the right way. We do things professionally. They're not played out like a circus in the press where there's weeks of speculation and potentially drawing other clubs into the mix. I definitely think this is the right way to do things. I also think it's a savvy way to spend your money. Teams can get promoted to the Premier League, get this windfall of money, and potentially just lash it out on fees and wages for players, and you don't get a return for it. Are you perhaps better off spending a smaller amount? I mean, just for argument's sake, say this new fella earns a couple of million a year, and he brings in a couple of scouts who earn $500,000 a year each. All they need to do is unearth 2 or 3 players who go on, who were bought for cheap, and then go on and do a brilliant job for us. They've paid for themselves. So rather than build everything on really poor foundations, get your backroom staff in place, get everything working the way you want it, and that gives you a longer term success, hopefully. That's got to be the aim, and I'm really excited by the way things are panning out at the moment. Admittedly, I don't know about this particular fella, but the things we're reading about him, like you say, it's all pinging through. The things we're reading about him and the way we seem to be acting is like a proper club at the top. You know, it's what we need to do, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just slightly distracted by someone sending through a tweet from a Newcastle outlet called Magpie Media, who seem to be losing their minds at this news. That Ornstein article about Sunderland's new director is damning for NUFC. Bloody hell! We'll see. You know, if they're getting worried about us, that can only be a good thing, I suppose.
Well, yeah, that's a pod in itself. But on a serious point, Newcastle do have a lot of money. Whether you agree with the owners or not, that's a pod for another day. Especially when you want to get back to bed, mate. But Newcastle have tens of millions to spend. We're not in that position, so we need to do things smartly. We need to box clever and, yes, spend money, but spend it in the right way. We can't afford to be lashing out cash left, right and centre. We've got to be a bit more canny with it. And if a club like Newcastle, who are in the Champions League, thought this fella could do a job, then that speaks volumes about his reputation. It tells you a lot, which is just as well because we're scrabbling for information about him.
Well, as well, I mentioned Juventus before. He's operating in that country, in that league. So it's obviously this guy's obviously someone with a growing reputation. Somebody who's well thought of in the game. And you do get these people in these circles, don't you? Like, who crop up every so often. If you remember, Dan Ashworth when he got that job at Brighton, and all of a sudden every club in the country wanted Dan Ashworth to come on board as part of their project. No, these people do appear from time to time, and time will tell whether he turns out to be any good for us. But I don't know. I just think it's a nice little bonus, this one.
Oh, it's cracking. You're right. There's certain names, because football's it can be a small world. Certain names, when they become flavour of the month, everybody knows about them. One thing that interests me about this fella is we're taking all of this on board. He's obviously got a lot of knowledge about French football, and a lot of people are saying at the moment that's where the value is. If this guy is going to be involved in recruitment and identifying players, France seems to be the place to go at the moment, because I think their leagues are in a lot of financial trouble. So you've got a lot of quality players becoming available potentially. This bloke might know some of them, might be able, bridge the gap and get those coming to Sunderland. If there's value there and he knows the market, happy days. We've got to exploit it.
I think that's a great point. That's another one, Andrew. Tick, well done.
Yeah.
About how this opens up different markets to Sunderland that we've not been really involved in before. You could argue that we have technically, because we signed Lefebvre, but he was known to Labris. It wasn't like, we went and raided the Italian leagues for a player who nobody had really heard of.
Right.
But it opens up a lot more avenues to us. I mean, he was in a similar post with Nice before that, and Nice, in that rung of teams underneath PSG have done very well, certainly in recent years, in terms of recruitment and things like that. And then you look at Roma, and the Tammy Abraham's actually a name we've been linked with, and I'm just thinking he plays for them, doesn't he?
Yes.
Could we be looking, even at Roma for some of their players, the contacts he's made there, but also the Serie A, whatever knowledge he's gained over the last year or so working there, the contacts he's made up, the information he's gathered just through his scouting teams of not just Italy but other foreign leagues. I just think, providing this guy is a good character, and one thing I will say is the club are very good at identifying people rather than, I know it's interesting that he's got links to Lebris, and that might have factored into the decision for this to happen. But even you go back to when they recruited Pedro, the assistant manager.
Yes.
That was done. You had to go through an interview process. It was done like a proper job rather than it being jobs for the boys type thing. And then before him, Ali Barcarini, the goalie coach, he had the same thing.
Aye. Again, that's the right way to do it, though. It's definitely the right way to do it.
Yeah. So what it's meant is we've actually recruited good people who've came in and done good jobs, and it was the same when we hired Lebris as well. We didn't go for obvious candidates. We found a manager who fitted the ideals the club were looking for, and it'll be the same with this guy.
It will be, and that, I think that shows that people often laugh at the term the model, and can fear that it means the club's stuck in its ways. But that is developing as time goes on, and the sheer fact that Lebris is potentially involved in him being brought in says a lot, because with Beale and with Mowbray, there were suggestions that they felt restricted because they weren't involved in certain appointments and certain transfers, whereas Lebris has presumably had a say in Isidore coming in. He's clearly had a say in Lefay coming in. It looks as if he's had a say in this latest news. So the club is shaping the way they do things constantly. They're not wedded to this one idea. Yeah. They will tweak as they go along, and I think we'll see that in some of the players we're linked with this season. If we just sign a load of unknown players who are 19 or 20, we might struggle. I like to think we will get a couple of players who might not know the Premier League, but they'll at least have top flight experience somewhere and be in a point in their careers where coming to Sunderland's a good next step. It's you can probably tell from what I can see so far, mate. It's pleasing. It's encouraging so far.
Yeah,
in a couple of months' time when he's being peddled, we might change our mind.
Yeah, I've just found this piece which is about his departure from Roma, and Roma in their statement when he departed confirmed he would be leaving to take on a new professional challenge. So it was hinted, so it's interesting though, because often, he's only been there a year, and if things don't work out, sometimes the club you're departing from, they just wash their hands and it's a short statement saying, thank you for your time kind of thing. But this statement said, AS Roma and technical director Florent Ghisolfi have mutually agreed to part ways. Over the past year, Florent has demonstrated professionalism and dedication during a crucial phase for the club. We express our gratitude for his contributions and we wish him the best of luck as he embarks on a new professional challenge. And then Ghisolfi, and I think I referred to this before, wrote on social media a little love letter back to Roma and said, thanks to Dan, Ryan and the entire Friedrichen family for the opportunity to lead this magical club. Thanks to all of you at Trigoria for welcoming us with open arms. I have never felt like a stranger. I have always felt at home thanks to my close collaborators who give everything for Roma. Thanks to the 3 coaches and the members of the first team staff who worked every minute with love and dignity, and especially to our magician, Mr. Ranieri. Thanks to every player on the team who never gave up during the storm. Our star was the team. Thanks to the fans who also in the storm never stopped pushing the boat. I leave full of good memories and emotions. I leave with the feeling of a job done together, with this 5th place finish despite the difficulties. A rejuvenated team, a restructured sports organisation, and the best is yet to come for Roma. Good luck to all of you at the club, to Mr. Gasparini and to my successor. Now that part, right at the end there about successor, is interesting to me because, and I may be wrong, might be wildly wrong in this, but the fact he even mentions it, and the fact that this has been a seamless transition, he's leaving, someone's coming in, makes me think this has been perhaps about to happen a little bit longer than we realise. You know, he's probably gave Roma his notice, he's gave them time to find someone, might have even had a hand in finding the successor and handing over, that sort of thing, which doesn't often happen in football. I might be wildly wrong with that, but it's the fact that he mentions it that makes me think, how long has this been about to happen? You know?
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. And obviously, when people leave, you sometimes take their statements with a pinch of salt. But it sounds as if he's done it in the right way. Like you say, he hasn't just dropped Roma in it. There would appear that this has been discussed over a period of time. Earlier on in that statement, I think the sentence that stood out to me was it something along the lines of, I'm grateful for this opportunity to lead this club.
Yeah.
It was something like that. That's obviously, he's obviously a big hitter as well. It's not like he was just doing a bit of photocopying in the back office. You know, sometimes when you see on somebody's CV, I've worked for this club and what have you, and then you find out that they were just, making the teas. This was a senior role he had at a serious club. To be able to poach him is potentially massive.
Yeah. Our Andy, who finds all these random stories all over the internet, has sent us a Reddit post from a Leon fan, which is quite interesting because it gives a little bit of insight into the fella we're grabbing. It's quite interesting. It's a Today post, by the way. This is in response to the story that's broken, so it's not like an old one. Somebody had wrote, don't really know anything about this fella, and this guy says, he is likely the best French sporting director at the moment. He was the architect of Lens's incredible story from League Two to Europe, alongside the coach Frank Heiser, with great signings like Danzo, who was sold to Tottenham 4 years after signing, Openda, who was sold for 40 million to Leipzig, and a bunch of other players. He then moved on to Nice, showing again his eye and his qualities, recruiting amongst others Bulka for 2 million, now worth 20 and considered one of League One's best goalkeepers, and reaching Europe in his second season, close to qualifying for the Champions League, which they did this season with basically the team he built, even though he left in July. This great work allowed him to step up again and be recruited by Roma. I didn't follow it closely, but it seems like this wasn't a success. He was fired after a year this week. It seems like he didn't really have the power of a sporting director, not able to choose his coach, with a lot of decisions taken by the owners, and his transfers seem to have not worked out as expected, despite a significant window on his first time being allowed to spend this much. So, and the final line says, I've seen some say his failure could partly be explained because he didn't speak Italian. So that might explain why he only lasted a year there. And that bit about not having a lot to say ultimately on football decisions and the owners overruling him is interesting, because that won't happen at Sunderland. So, it's all starting to make sense as we piece this together. This could be a good move for him as well as it is for us.
Yeah, true. And what is it you say, Gab? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Is that yes? Yeah.
Well done.
Got some.
11 at night, and you've been very fluid there, mate.
Aye.
Here's everyone who ever sit down.
Yeah, but in seriousness, it'll take months, even years, to get a proper idea of this fella. So at the moment, you can only go off fans of clubs where he's been before. And that's a pretty big statement this supporter has made, in that he was probably the best French sporting director or director of football that he's aware of.
He's like the best French director at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, for the time being, we can only go on those experiences. And that's not just trying to be nice and like, oh, he's a canny fella, I wish him all the best. That's pretty in-depth and promising And yeah, maybe that was an issue at Roma, the language, or perhaps the structure didn't allow him to do the same things he's done elsewhere. But you're dead right. At Sunderland, it appears to me as if Louis Dreyfus sets the parameters, but after that, he takes a back step. And it's been up to Speakman and those around him to actually carry out that vision. And you have to imagine that this fella is going to be given a similar amount of responsibility and be allowed to do the things that have made him so good in France.
Yeah. Well, we spent all this time talking about how we're going to appoint this fella. You just watch. By the time I wake up in the morning, it'll have, it's a load of shite. It's not happening and all this. Now, I'll be honest, it really caught my imagination, this. I'm excited, even though nothing's been confirmed. We've heard nothing from Sunderland FC. It just seems like a matter of time, which is why I felt it was important we get on here and talk about it. I reckon by tomorrow we'll probably know a bit more. But the very small details we have at this point give me hope and excitement for what's to come this summer. I think this is another important but exciting forward-thinking move from a football club, which can only lead to better things. I think, I'm excited.
Agreed. I mean, yeah, by tomorrow, once we've had a chance to gather our thoughts, we might know a bit more. But certainly, I think you're right. The buzz around it looks massive. I mean, if you want though, Gav, once we finish recording this, we can record an alternative one where he hasn't been employed and we can slate him and say we never wanted him anyway. We can cover our backs if you want. But it does look like it's happening, and it appears to tick a lot of boxes, and it appears to follow the way the club have been doing things. And yeah, could be exciting. Could be a really interesting few weeks once this fella gets his feet under the table. Absolutely,
mate. Well, let's get ourselves off to bed, because I'm not coming with you, by the way. We're in separate beds. We're across the internet here. But yes,
like
I think
Bert and Ernie.
That's it. Yeah, time to hit the hay, and hopefully, as the weekend develops, we'll have more details on our apparent new director of football, where we can actually go a bit more in depth on this. But this is just our immediate reaction to the news. So thank you very much, mate. Cheers, and you can get back to whatever you were up to before, washing dishes and watching the telly and all that.
Yeah.
Crack on with that. Thank you
good
very
stuff.
much.
My pleasure.
And thanks to listeners. Hopefully, as I said, I'll leave this to the morning, but I think I'm just going to put it straight out there. So you might even be listening to this not too long after we've recorded. So thank you for listening. We've got loads coming up this weekend on the feeds. We've actually meant to have a poor old Simon Ramsden, I think, was supposed to be out this morning. But I'm going to shunt that one to tomorrow. So we've got interviews coming thick and fast over the coming days. We might even do a more detailed news roundup for the weekend, so there'll be that. And I think we've got an interview with Lee Howie as well coming up over the weekend. And then, of course, you lads will be back on Monday with On This Week, which is already recorded in the can, isn't it? So that was another fun, interesting one for you lot.
Yeah, it was a good laugh, and as far as I'm aware, that's good to go on Monday. So if you enjoy your Sunderland history, worth having a little listen to that one.
Absolutely, there's some great stuff in there. I love them. Again, thanks, listeners. We'll be back over the weekend with the pod every single day, so we'll catch you on the next one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.